Good afternoon. So Arlington. Arlington is a city west of Dallas, east of Fort Worth, which is the home of University of Texas at Arlington. AT&T Stadium, which hosts Dallas Cowboys. Globe Life Park, which hosts Texas Rangers. We have a big recreational place, Six Flags, and you see this is the Texas Giant over there. So Arlington is a pretty dynamic city with very diverse population. It's pretty populous too. According to 2010 census, there were almost 365K people, which is, according to 2017, it's almost 396K people living there with 133K households and 90,000 families, with a density of 3,811 people per square mile. Out of those 133 thousands of households, 5% of them had someone living alone who were 65 years of age or old. And among the population, 8% of the population were older people who were 65 years of age or old. The median income of the city is $50,000 in 2011. And there were 16% families who were living below the poverty line, including 8% of the, and 20% of Arlington population, where 8% of those were 65 years of age or older. Even though it's a pretty diverse population with a good percentage of population with older generation, there are not many public transportation options available in Texas, Arlington, Texas. And this could be an issue for people who have trouble getting on their own and doesn't have a personal vehicle. So City of Arlington has HandyTran service, which is a door-to-door transportation option for older adults and persons with disabilities. And we have a VIA, a rideshare service that connects communities to key destinations, but have a very limited service boundary. So our research, so what we did in our research was we characterized the travel pattern of our paratransit system rider, which is HandyTran, and examined the users of HandyTran service. And we looked at their activity patterns, specifically where they're going and why they're going there, what they're doing there, to understand the transportation needs of the paratransit system HandyTran user, and then analyze the likelihood of mode shift from HandyTran to the rideshare service VIA, and we looked at different expansion scenarios. So this is a graph showing the trip growth. So basically from 2009 to 2018, there is a substantial trip growth. People are traveling more. There was almost a 42% trip growth in 2018. However, there were more. So by the time in 2018, there were more canceled trips and less completed trips. You see the blue line that are for the completed trips, and the orange line is for the canceled trips, and you see the shift somewhere between the year 2012 or 13 and in 2014, there was a big shift. So we wanted to look at why this is happening, and we looked at one of the customers' profile just to have an idea why this is happening. And we saw this person is booking 3 trips every day for work, and 2 of them are for the same latitude, longitude, for the same location. And if you see here, they're booking it 10 minutes apart. That means they're booking 2 trips to get back home from work, but they're canceling one of the trip. And this could be a very serious operational issue, because when they're booking the trip, City of Arlington HandyTran is allocating vehicle to the demand, and then they're canceling the trips. Now the vehicles are idle sitting there. So this is so we started looking at the user's profile to see who can shift from HandyTran to VIA, where they can they can book their trip real time, and they don't have to book it 24 hours advance, and they don't have to cancel it. So, so we wanted to see the trip frequency, and if you can see from this frequency graph, most of the people are making small number of trips, and there are some people who are really doing large number of trips, and they are the target who can be shifted from the paratransit service to the rideshare service. So the people of HandyTran, their age ranges from 12 years to 107 years, with a median age of 54 years. 66.7% of the customers don't use any devices while they are on the trip in the HandyTran vehicle. 79% of the trips are not used. In the 79% of the trips, people are not using any devices, not carrying any devices. So 79.91% of the people have no mental, physical, or visual disability. 18.53% people have physical disability, who are making 26.91% of the trips. So that means these are the people who doesn't have any disability, or is not carrying a device with them, have potentiality to shift from the paratransit service to the more traditional ride-sharing or microtransit system. Again, this is a temporal variation. We saw sharp growth in special purpose trips, and a decline in the work purpose trips. And if you see, it's around 2012 and 2013 when they started making so many cancellation on trips. But overall, they're choosing HandyTran mostly for spatial purpose, recreational purpose, followed by medical and work. And I'll hand it over to Dr. Mttingly.
I need to speak. Sorry. It's okay. Yeah, I think I was talking on that. All right. So one of the things that Farah was pointing out earlier with that person who's canceling trips on a regular basis is they're seeking something that HandyTran doesn't provide. They're seeking mobility. They want on-demand service. They don't want to walk out of work and wait around for 10 minutes. When they walk out, they want their ride to show up and pick them up and take them home. I mean, that makes sense. And so our purpose here for why we're investigating this is twofold. The city, they want to save money because they want to eliminate HandyTran rides. Because they can get people out of the HandyTran and into VIA, they can lower their costs. I'm using, it's all, he said it would go right into it. It's perfect. Y'all can hear me in back, right? Yeah. Okay, I'm good. All right, so, but at the same time, we are trying to understand, are all the people that are using HandyTran even aware of VIA and that as an alternative? How do they view that as a potential mode shift for them? Are they willing to, have they even thought about it? What kind of barriers might be in place for them? I'm going to talk about some of that part of the investigation here right at the end. And so I'm going to come back and I'm going to revisit that. But first, what we're going to do is we're going to look at where people are, where they're traveling, and look at our current VIA service area. So our current VIA service area, what we're highlighting here, this is the central core of Arlington. And if we look closely, we can see where I get to go to work every day and scamper across the street trying to avoid getting hit by cars. They thankfully put in a signal in the past 2 years. Before that, it was definitely a terrifying walk across the street. This is also the area of Arlington where Farah was telling us about the recreational area. That's right over here where we've got the football stadium, the baseball stadium, and the amusement park all stacked up on top of each other. The two major hospitals in Arlington are in this area. We've got a hospital down here, hospital right here as well. And so those hospitals are serving most of the population in Arlington. And in some cases, some of the population from outside of Arlington. We also have large shopping areas located in this central core. The other key thing about this central core is it's capturing some of the lowest income populations that we have in Arlington over here along 360 and right up here in this area along I-30. Both of those areas have older, poorer neighborhoods in Arlington. Definitely not the $50,000 median income that we were talking about, that Farah was talking about earlier. We're going to see that in some other areas of Arlington. And so here we're looking at where the HandyTran ride current trips are, looking at our VIA area, and one of the things that we have here is the HandyTran service area extends beyond the border of Arlington. And so that's why it looks kind of rectangular or lopsided in shapes, and this VIA area is so small, is we're extending into Fort Worth, we're extending up over into Grand Prairie, down into Mansfield. We're extending outside the boundaries of Arlington for the HandyTran service. But we're capturing this central core of Arlington, and then there's another piece of Arlington that runs over here all the way to the lake. And then a piece of Arlington in the north, piece of Arlington in the south. And over here for this VIA service, you get this little circle right here. This circle represents something outside Arlington. It's right about there. And it's the train station. The one train station even kind of close to Arlington. It requires about a 15-20 minute drive depending upon traffic for you to get to the train station. Once you get to that train station, you would then be able to connect to the commuter rail that could take you to either downtown Fort Worth or downtown Dallas. And once you reach downtown Dallas or downtown Fort Worth, you can then connect with the transit systems in those particular municipalities. It is the only real connectivity that we have between the Trinity Metro system in Fort Worth and the Dallas area rapid transit system in Dallas until about 3 months ago, when we finally have a rail connection on the Tarrant County or Fort Worth side that connects to DFW as well. So we now have the possibility for you to change between the systems on the north side of DFW or along this Trinity Metro rail system. And so what we're going to be doing with this north zone, the central B, and the south, and this central A is we're going to be looking at the trips, and essentially if the city decides to expand their via service area, how many of these Handytran riders would they be able to try to capture? So one of the things that we did with our users is we've broken them down into deciles. And so this is part of what Farah was talking about, where we want to try to target those most high frequency users. Because those high frequency users are going to, from the city's perspective, maximize their cost savings. And this project is funded by the city. So our first goal is meeting their needs. Doesn't mean that there would certainly additional people that could be reached and have greater mobility as soon as we expand into those areas. But we're focused on looking at this upper 30% of our deciles primarily. And we've broken our deciles into two different approaches. In this one, we've broken it up based on numbers of customers. So in this case, we've got, these are the top 30% of the customers and the number of trips that they're taking. And we see that the top 56 customers are taking, on average, 224 Handytran trips a year. It's a lot of Handytran trips. And we see that we drop off quite quickly when we get into the next group of 57. We're down at 88, 46. We've got over here in these lower deciles virtually no trips occurring for the residents. And so the city could save an awful lot of Handytran expenses if they could just figure out how to convince a few of these customers to switch. What we have over here is showing our current breakdown for trips between AA, BB. This is our OD matrix that we've got for the different deciles. All right. And then this set of deciles is looking at breaking it up by trips. And what we can see here is 10% of the Handytran trips, 5 people. 20% of the trips, 13 people. And 22 people completing 33% of the trips in Arlington for Handytran. That's a pretty intense usage from these individuals. All right. So what we're looking at. Yes?
Did you look at that section of the population using the service of what their demographics were?
Right. So we have not broken down the specific demographics yet on them, correct? For the
previous two slides were for the CA population.
Right, but
With disabilities or
previous. But the question is, how old are they? Are they the disabled working age population, which is what my suspicion is. My guess is we're looking at disabled working people completing these trips. That's what my hypothesis is, but we have not gotten quite to that point in our analysis. Right?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And so here, for this set where we're looking at, okay, this is the overall group. So this is looking at our overall population, and we're seeing that 40% of our trips are completed by this first decile. So 10% are doing 40% of our trips, with the average number of trips for this group being 390 trips. And we have 23 people taking on average 507 trips per year. All right, so here, looking at each of our different areas within the city, we're looking at the number of trips and the number of residents that would be served within each of those areas if we expanded. If we just expanded up here to the north, we'd be serving an additional 7% of the total trips. We'd be able to reach an additional 17% of the residents beyond what we already reach. We'd be able to serve more trips if we moved to the south, fewer residents. If we expanded in B, we'd reach more residents but serve fewer trips. Okay? What's happening there, I'm relatively certain, is a socioeconomic issue. Because we've capped in the central area of Arlington, we've captured the lower income area already. The rest of the area that we would be expanding to over here as we move over to the lake, that's the wealthy area of Arlington. And so while there certainly are going to be some older adults that are in need of service, and there's a large number of them, they're going to need the service a lot less frequently, by and large. In the south, in the north, but especially in the south, south is a relatively newer development, and so our population hasn't aged as much there, but it's also much lower income than we would see in North Arlington and in the Central B area. And so if we expand via out, we can see that there is opportunities for us to continue to serve more and more residents and also service more of these trips. So what we're doing to try to examine and get more information, well, I'm not doing it, Courtney is collecting surveys from the HandyTran users. And the idea is to get demographic information that we can use to link with our current HandyTran data that Karen was talking about, to try to get a sense of what are the opinions of these different demographics that might influence their via knowledge, via interest, and kind of get a sense of what are some of the challenges that we face. So when we're looking at demographics, age is really important, employment, and disability. Those are the big three things that we care about. When we're looking at the via knowledge and interest, well, they need to be aware that it exists. They need to have a sense of what's involved in using it, okay? And so that ties back into their interest. We're also very interested in their sense of trip purpose and how that might influence their interest in using VIA. Because we're not positive that we could see a mode shift from HandyTran to VIA for all trip purposes, but maybe we could see it for a lot of the trip purposes. Once again, these employment trips, if they if they had a high confidence that VIA would show up, they might be willing to make a substitute. But if they don't have a high confidence that VIA will show up, then they'll probably never make a substitution. Smartphone access, unfortunately. Supposedly there are alternate ways for the customers to request VIA service, but that requires additional knowledge and awareness and probably goes way beyond what our population is experiencing. And then technical skill, just navigating a shared mobility alternative. So what we're looking at long term is trying to look at this shift opportunity, and we really see this as an opportunity for us to target specific users and use a social networking snowballing opportunity, because a single user that's interacting at the senior center in Arlington might be able to convince other people that are going to the senior center that, hey, you don't need to use HandyTran. We can just call VIA and they'll come by and they'll pick us up and take me home. And so we're looking at then our next step, which grad students should have lots of fun with, is quantifying the potential system savings, where we look at what is this trade-off for Arlington. For every time they can switch a rider over, what kind of cost savings could they be accruing, which then they could translate into investments in VIA, which then provide more mobility to the overall population of Arlington rather than just the limited disabled and older adult population. And I believe that gets me to thank you and any opportunity for questions.